In this week's video, I'm going to talk about my progress in healing my inner child through childhood nostalgia, aka cartoons, aka Adventure Time, and how you can do the same. Yeah, nostalgia, right? Love it. Why, hello there. It's Darling Nihilism here, your favorite certified Zoomer who has lived mental health trials and tribulations and is on the journey of personal development. Yes, so this week I want to talk about something that I think is fundamental in learning to love yourself, self-love, and building a foundation where you start to feel good about not only your present life and who you are now, but who you were in the past. So I'm going to be touching briefly on the inner child, my experience with it, why it's so important, and things like that. So let's get into it. First things first, let's get a clear definition. Our inner child is the part of our subconscious mind that's the driving force behind many of our emotions and gut reactions. That's because the positive and negative experiences we have when we're children and our feelings about those experiences tend to define our internalized belief system that we carry with us into adulthood. I heard somewhere back in the day that the first 7 years of your life are the most vital and can really decide definitively how you're going to be as an adult. And I feel that it's not just the first 7 years. I feel that it's most of your childhood, maybe when you get to 16, 17 or something like that. But I feel that thinking back to who you were as a child is really fundamental into going through who you were and how you're trying to become better. So I guess I'll start by touching briefly on my experience with my inner child, how I got here, what's been different now than before. I'm not going to go into anything personal, but to be pretty broad, I've experienced a good amount of childhood trauma from as early on as I can remember. It's quite difficult to deal with because I feel and I know that my brain will sometimes block out certain memories I've had or certain experiences, and I don't know if that's like a self-protective kind of thing, but it's something that I've recognized, and the more I just take care of myself, and recently I've been listening to a lot of old music I've been listening to since I was 13 through 19, 20, that 6-year period, and I'll listen to a song and it'll just trigger me, not necessarily in a bad way, but just remind me of where I was at and what I was doing, and then from there, it's like those memories that I never would have thought about before come up. It's a little painful, but I think it's healthy to face what is buried underneath, because it's not just that my brain has thrown these things away. They're still there. They're just buried, and I think it's important to deal with it. I would say a lot of the peaks in my mental health, the stress and things that happened in school that led me to therapy and medication, that all kind of happened when I was still a child. So I didn't really start to think about the concept of the inner child and having a relationship with myself until I was really like 17. I'm gonna say I took it seriously at 17. That was around the time of lockdown, when the pandemic first started. I just took it as an opportunity to really get to know myself. And before that time, I don't really think, like, I could be alone and I could tolerate it, but I don't think I really loved myself or loved being alone. Now I genuinely value my alone time, but because of lockdown and being forced to not be around people at school and friends in the neighborhood, it really opened the door for me to kind of love myself. I remember I had low-key was kind of a breakthrough. I remember I was listening to some music and I just remember thinking to myself, I love me, I love this, I'm so happy right now. I just remember thinking that, and I was alone and I was crying a little bit, and before that point I don't remember ever feeling that way. Granted, I was like 16, 17 at the time, teenager or whatever. Yeah, I think lockdown really started the journey of like learning what the inner child means, looking back on old memories and who I was then, who I was at that moment. And even now at 21, I can look back at that 17-year-old version of myself and think, wow, like you were already thinking about your 13-year-old self, and now I'm thinking about you. And then when let's say I'm 25, I'm going to look back on this, and it's just weird. That's a whole nother thing, but it's just weird how that all works. As lockdown went on and when people started going out more, vaccines came out and stuff like that, I kind of put on the back burner. I took the opportunity of being online my senior year to kind of just do more unconventional things that I wouldn't have been able to do if I was going to school. I was also working. So that kind of, all that happening kind of put this breakthrough I had with recognizing my inner child and recognizing that you can have a relationship with yourself. It kind of put on the back burner. It wasn't until this year, 2025, when I decided I was truly going to do everything in my power to take care of myself through, mental health and physical health and emotional health, like all the three main things they tell you need to take care of to be a healthy person. And that's when, and I'm trying to piece it all together, because I think it was just, I went to a park and I was just in a mood. And whenever I'm in a mood now, I just go to a park and walk. I love nature. I love to walk, so it just makes sense. And I was listening to a bunch of songs I loved as a kid. And as a kid, I would say like 12, tween ages. And then I started listening to one of the songs from one of my favorite shows, Steven Universe. Steven Universe. That kind of made me nostalgic. I love nostalgia. I'll be nostalgic for even like 6 months ago. Not a joke. Homegirl from the Inside Out 2, nostalgia was always coming through. That's my brain. Nostalgia was always coming through in my brain. And as I was listening to Steven Universe, I was like, we can go a little deeper. Yeah, we can go a little deeper. And then I remember I started listening to the songs from Adventure Time. Now, this is a side topic. Personally, I think the songs from Steven Universe are better. Don't get me, Rebecca Sugar be like that. But Adventure Time for me was, I think, the first piece of art, first anything that really changed me and is really fundamental, not only to my humor, but like my outlook on life. And honestly, I don't think it's stupid to say that it really changed my life and it really influenced me. I think anyone who was around when the show started to where it ended would understand. Also, I'm just a lover of cartoons, so I never really believed that they were dumb or stupid or only for kids and stuff like that. Even like shows like South Park and Bob's Burgers, stuff like that. Like, I love adult animations too. Always been a fan. But going back to the point, I started listening to songs from Adventure Time, and I just remember thinking to myself, I just had a little epiphany. Thought to myself, man, like, Adventure Time makes me so happy. I love Adventure Time. And then I think from there, I was like, you know what? Whenever I'm feeling a little down, whenever I feel like my inner child needs something, I'm just gonna watch an episode of Adventure Time. And the great thing about Adventure Time is that like each episode, at least in the first few seasons, I don't know about the later seasons, pretty sure, but they're all like 12, 15 minutes. So it's easy to watch like 2 or 3 at a time and then do something else and go back to it. So I remember that day, I went on my computer, I started from the beginning, and I just started watching Adventure Time. And I don't think I've ever done that, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Like, started from I will go back and watch like earlier seasons because like nostalgia, but I never really went from the beginning and watched them all in consecutive order. And from the first episode, and the pilot is like, I'll always remember the pilot. It was like I had this feeling of my inner child being like, yes, you're doing the right thing. This is what we need right now. I think I had that realization like a week or 2 ago. So like the past 2 weeks, I've been just here or there whenever I feel a little down, or even if I'm just doing my hair or I just want to break from editing or something, I'll just put on 1 or 2 episodes of Adventure Time. And it's just one of those things it just makes me laugh in a genuine way. It makes me think about, I remember when Adventure Time was going to come out. I remember they were showing like little trailers and they're like, this new cartoon. I remember putting it on the calendar in the fridge, like, new show coming out. Like, it's just all these things that truly put a smile on my heart and on my face, literally. And so I guess I'll get now into, why is this important? Why am I even doing this? What's the point of feeding the inner child? People have gone on to be somewhat healthy, happy people without really ever tuning in to who they were before and things they love. So why is this important? Here's my case. I believe that fundamentally, we are not only meant to love other people and have communities and have other people we can share ourselves with, but our relationship with ourselves is the most important, because we come into this world alone and we're going to leave this world alone. When I die, I cannot bring anyone. It's going to be a truly singular experience. So I think throughout our lives, it's important that we build this relationship with ourselves. And though not everyone has childhood trauma, not everyone has baggage from when they were a kid, it wasn't always happy. No one's had a perfect childhood. There are things, whether it wasn't your family but friends, or wasn't your friends but teachers, or wasn't your teachers, like everyone has something that scarred them that they carried on after they turned 18. And in order to love ourselves, I think it's important that we love previous versions of ourselves. Maybe we weren't such a good person in middle school and high school, but we changed. Maybe we were a brat up until the age we were 10, and then something happened and we became distant, and then we went to college. Like, I think, as I said before, first 7 years of your life dictate how you are as an adult. I think it's important to not only accept who you are now, work on yourself now, but work on that kid, because there was no perfect kid. Even perfect kids have some baggage. So I think overall why I find it truly important is, and maybe I'm speaking from a person who has had childhood trauma, doesn't have the best relationship with their parents, it's important to really treat yourself and your inner child how you were never treated, and to make up for that. And let me say this to anyone who's also going through it right now. I know it's not fair. I know it's not fair that whether you're 21, 30, 55, that you have to work to reparent your inner child, to take care of yourself. Someone should have done that for you, but it's just how it is. It's just how it is. And you watching, at least you're doing something to help yourself. At least you're doing something to move forward. Some people get scarred and they never let the wound heal. They never. I just want to say that I get it. I know it's not fair, but it is how it is. And personally for me, because I don't know about everyone else, but I'm grateful that I have the resources to take care of myself. I have the time, and I have internet, and I can watch Adventure Time, and I can document this, and I can share it with people. Not to just be unrealistic and just to like, oh, let's just be positive all the time. But truly, though I do have baggage, though I have things in my life that I would prefer not to have happened, I have a lot to be grateful for. And I don't think that's just being positive for nothing. I think that's being real too, you know? Not everything was bad in my childhood. It really wasn't that good, but not everything was bad. Yeah, that's why I think it's important for anyone, even people who said they had great childhoods. I think it's still important to reflect on your insecurities, or maybe someone bullied you briefly, and like really target in on the root causes of how you developed in life, baggage you have. Highly important. So now that's out the way, I think I'm just gonna go into how you can start healing your inner child, healing yourself. These are just my tips, things I found that have helped me genuinely find peace in what has happened to me, but also just getting excited about life and creating new memories and things like that. So let's get to it. So I think the first thing you do, if you've never thought about your inner child, if you're watching this video and you're like, whoa, what's this concept? I think the first thing you should do is to get a representation of your inner child. So find a picture of yourself. It can be from when you were 6, it can be from when you were 10, it can be from when you were 14. I think mine's like 11 or 12, because that's when I really remember starting to, maybe it was earlier, but that's when like I can truly remember just being depressed, not being well, was 11. So I have a picture of myself when I was 11. I keep it in my journal, and that's just a physical representation of my inner child. Of course, when I'm doing the work, aside from watching shows and stuff like that, there are different ages and different things that have happened, but this picture of me is just a representation of, so it can just give my mind something to kind of hold on to, that I'm not just trying to mash it with who I am today, but a clear separation. So I think it's important to just choose a photo. It can be one you like, it can be one where you were really going through it, it could be anything you want, but that's the first thing. Next, I would say, is to start a dialogue, not only with yourself, but specifically your inner child. This may seem a little strange, but I think it's important to maybe start with journaling, because that's less weird. And personally, I don't think it's weird, but just like if I'm thinking about like a typical person who's never heard this before, I think journaling is a good way to start, just to talk to yourself like you were talking to a child, and then to respond as your inner child. You can also do this through positive self-talk. Maybe take some time to reflect on insecurities you had, or troubling thoughts you had when you were a kid, tween, teenager. And it doesn't necessarily, like I keep saying, like first 7 years and all that, it doesn't necessarily mean like you were single digits. Like you can be 14 and that's when things start to go wrong, and that's where you could start there. Like you don't have to necessarily be a child to work on your inner child. But yeah, I think journaling would be the best way if you're not used to talking to yourself out loud or positive self-talk. But I think it's important to really do this alone, soon. That's something I'm going to bring up again. But really just have no shame. Don't judge yourself. Whatever comes up, comes up. And again, you don't have to share this with anyone. No one's entitled to go through this inner child work. If you never want to tell a soul about this, it's fine. But in order for you to really get somewhere, you have to leave shame out the door. You have to really be okay with being a little weird to get to where you want to go. Okay, next, I would say you're going to choose a song or a few songs, or even make a short playlist that you feel heals your inner child. Now, I am a music lover, so this is pretty easy to me. I've been doing this even before I knew what inner child work is. I would say, to be a little vulnerable, I would say my go-to song is, because I have one song, I have a few other songs that kind of form around the song, and then I haven't made a playlist, but they're just songs I know in my head that I'm like, okay, yep, inner child, she needs a little something, something. The main one for me, and the main one I've been listening to as long as I can remember, is Don't Give In by William Finn, my favorite musical composer. And I listened to the original version, not the one with Jonathan Groff. Love Jonathan Groff, but the original just hits different for me. I remember the first time I started playing that song first I would play it to comfort myself. I wasn't really thinking about my inner child or anything like that. It was just a comforting thing. But as time went on and I started learning about inner child work and just giving myself the comfort I never got as a kid, that's like a song I'll always put on the playlist. That's a song that's always going to be on rotation. And again, it doesn't have to be a musical. It doesn't have to be, again, that I'm just sharing to give you an example of what kind of song it could be, but it can be any kind of song. It can be a rap song. It could be whatever you feel that your inner child needs to hear. I recommend the song to be something that would speak to your inner child. It doesn't necessarily have to be a song that came out around the time you were a child. Again, my song came out 90s or something like that, and I didn't start getting into the musical till I was a teenager. So again, it doesn't really have to do with like my inner child, but it's a song that speaks to me. It's a song that gives me comfort, not only the lyrics and the music, it's just everything in it. So it's really up to you. There's no framework about what kind of song it should be or what kind of songs you should choose. But I would say just keep in mind that it should be comforting to your inner child. It should represent something that you felt you didn't get as a child. Maybe something you felt you needed to be told. And for me, it was Don't Give In, because I was suey. It's not a joke, but like, yeah, I was suey. Next, like, the whole basis of this video, I would say pick a show that you loved. This one should be something that came out when you were a kid, or you watch as a kid. It doesn't have to came out when you were a kid, but you watched as a kid, and rewatch the whole thing. So again, mine is Adventure Time, because it was it was just one of the first shows I remember I started when it came out, watched all the way through to the end. It doesn't have to necessarily be a cartoon. It doesn't necessarily have to be a kid's show. I feel that this show should just represent a time in your life where you found joy and comfort in watching this show, whether it be through the characters or the storyline, whatever you want. And just start from the beginning. Don't do this while you're doing laundry, or don't do this while you're supposed to be writing an essay. Find time, and you can, if you do one episode a week, that's fine. But find time to start from the pilot to the end, or if it's still going, to the most recent episode. Do nothing else and truly zone in on it. And I say this because, again, this is what I did with Adventure Time. But there were so many things that, first of all, it's just really surreal to watch something as a kid and then watch it again as an adult. Like, so many things go over your head. Person who wants to be in screenwriting, it's just the way dialogue is written is so interesting. I feel that when you truly focus in on this, you're giving your inner child the attention they always deserved. You are the most important person in your life at that moment. It should be all the time, but I understand that it's not easy for everyone. I think it's important to just really take the time, even if it's one episode a week, to really just focus on that, to let yourself be a kid again. Just watch the show. If you need to pause it and say something, I'm a big pauser when it comes to shows and movies. I'm a big rewinder. I got to work on that. But yeah, just find time to really just be like, okay, let me just do this for my inner child. I'm gonna give it an hour. That's it. The last thing I would say in the process of healing your inner child, and this is a process that I don't know if it ever ends, to be frank. I think this is something that goes on until maybe you're at least 40, like halfway through your life, and then you can start to be like, oh, we over that. But this is a long-term thing. These are just a few tips, again, to help you get started. But the last thing I would say is to start making new positive memories. And when I say new positive memories, this this also means to do it by yourself. This is an interesting one because whenever I tell people, personally, like I've driven across country 3 times at this point, and I'm gonna do it a 4th time. Whenever I tell people that the first thing they ask is, were you alone? And I say yes. And they seem pretty shocked by that. Not necessarily shocked that I drove pretty much 40 hours straight across America, but the fact that I was alone doing it. And as a woman, a person with a pussy, they want to go, what freaking ever. But the point I'm trying to make is that people have a hard time doing things alone. Now, I think there are some people that can like be alone with their thoughts, be alone when they're at home. But even when I was younger, I would go to the movies by myself. I go to the park by myself. I think I've gone to an amusement park by myself because I'm a big roller coaster person. And to me, it's just so normal. And again, that's because of family dynamics and whatever. It was kind of like, it was either that or I didn't do anything. But I think it's important, especially when you're an adult and when you're reflecting on some memories and some nostalgia that can be painful, some things you have not thought about since it has happened. I think it's important to also go through something hard and then create something new out of it. So maybe you choose a restaurant you really love and just eat whatever you want on the menu. Like even if you're trying to be a little healthy, cut out like a cheat day, eat everything on the menu. Or if you love roller coasters like me, just take yourself to Six Flags and go on the rides by yourself and just truly doing things for yourself and imprinting that I'm reflecting on who I was as a child and I'm making sure to give myself grace, but I'm also doing things for who I am now that in 10, 20 years, I'm going to look back on. And even though I wasn't a child, it's going to feel healing for your inner child overall. That you took the time as a young adult or even 30s, 40s, if you're starting now, that's perfectly okay. It's never too late to start. Just taking the time to acknowledge what went wrong before, what was out of your control, and deciding to do something for yourself. And I just mean overall that 10 years down the line, when I'm gonna assume you're in a better place, you can look back and just feel happy that you took the time to do something for yourself. And it's uncomfortable doing things by yourself. I mean, not for me. But I can imagine for other people who are used to just having a lot of friends or family and things like that, it can be uncomfortable, and that's okay. The first time you do something new or do something that's unconventional, it's going to be a little uncomfortable, and as you do it more and more, it becomes more comfortable. And I think it's important to, when you decide to do something for yourself, whether it be eating at a restaurant, amusement park, I think it's important to choose something that you feel your inner child never got. So maybe you always wanted to go on this ride but your parents didn't let you, or whatever, or even something small like that, something that you felt was overlooked as a child and maybe people thought you were dumb, and when you got older you thought you were a little bit dumb for it. But I think what people fail to remember is that when you're a child, everything feels as important as it is. I remember being upset about things I look back on now and I'm like, girl, calm the hell down. But in the moment, it felt like that. In the moment, I was going through puberty and it really felt as bad as I thought it was. I think it's important to, again, reparent yourself in the way and kind of be like, okay, darling, it's okay. We're going to go on this ride. You're going to have a good time and everything's going to be okay. And truly treating yourself with the unconditional love maybe you never got or maybe you never felt. And again, it doesn't have to be like an expensive dinner or going to an amusement park, but maybe buying a copy of a book you loved as a kid and just rereading it or something like that. Yes, sir. I think that all these tips will not transform or heal your inner child like that. I don't think it's that easy. But I think if you try to do all these things and you do them repeatedly, and consistency is key. It's not a one-time thing. Consistency is key. I think if you do it enough times, you will genuinely start to feel better about yourself, about who you were before, and how to move forward. This video was really just inspired by me loving on Adventure Time, just looking back on characters that really brought me joy and just really warms my heart. And I'm not the type of person who's like happy on a consistent basis, but so that's it. That's my little story. Those are my little tips or whatever. I hope that anything you heard throughout this video or any of the tips I gave seem interesting to you, something you'd like to try, something you've tried. Let me know in the comments. Let me know on social media. Actually, don't let me know on social media. Just let me know in the comments because I'm not trying to be on Instagram all the time. Real talk. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and schmauzow!